when we joined in on this war against the Russians, we're standing behind Biden, and he would fight till the end. Now, of course, it's very different. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think that what's happening in Venezuela, and even if you add an invasion of Greenland to that uh, problem set in the Western Hemisphere, it pales in comparison to what's happening in the Ukraine war. The fact is that what Trump has tried to do with the Europeans vis-a-vis the Ukraine war is shift the burden of supporting Ukraine onto the shoulders of the Europeans. And the Europeans of course, cannot shoulder that burden. They don't have the financial resources or the weaponry to support Ukraine. And Ukraine is going to lose the war. And once Ukraine loses the war, there's going to be a blame game. And the Europeans are going to blame the Americans for withdrawing support for Ukraine and shifting the burden to them. And Trump will blame the Europeans. He will say, they didn't cooperate with me diplomatically, and I therefore turned over the responsibility for dealing with Ukraine to the Europeans, and they did not measure up to the task, so they're responsible. So you'll have this blame game. And then you'll have a blame game inside of Europe itself. You'll have people like Viktor Orban on one side and Keith Starmer on the other side and Macron on the other side, and they'll all be arguing about who's responsible and where we go from here. And at the same time, as I said before, the Russians will be going to great lengths for good strategic reasons to exacerbate those tensions inside of Europe and to exacerbate those tensions across the Atlantic Ocean. Uh, so I think that you're going to have a lot of trouble in Europe moving forward. And most importantly, you're going to have poisonous relations between Russia and Europe for as far as the eye can see. One does not want to underestimate the catastrophic consequences of the April 2008 decision to bring Ukraine into NATO. It has, for the foreseeable future, and we're talking about a long time into the future, poisoned relations between Russia on one side and Europe on the other side. And this is going to be, as I said before, an increasingly divided Europe. And the United States is not going to be serving as the pacifier in ways that it has done in the past. This is going to be terrible for Europe. And I think Europe is in real trouble. And I think that's a bigger problem for Europe than the whole question of what's going on in Venezuela or what's going on in with regard to Greenland. And by the way, again, to go back to my point that the Europeans are desperate to keep NATO intact, which means keeping the American pacifier in Europe, this is why the European leaders appease the Americans, and here we're talking about President Trump, why they appease President Trump at every turn. But that's not a winning strategy because, as we talked about, you have to stand up to Trump if you have any hopes of getting your way with him. The Chinese figured this out, by the way. Remember, early in his term, his second term, President Trump tried to get tough with the Chinese with tariffs. And the Chinese made it clear to him in no uncertain term that they had cards to play and they would use those cards. And the end result is that Trump backed off. Same thing with the Houthis. Remember, he said he was going to go in, slam the Houthis. He said that President Biden was a pussycat. He didn't wage war against the Houthis in a meaningful way. He, Donald Trump, a real man, was going to go in and do it differently. And he'd bring the Houthis to their knees. Well, he went in and he tried to defeat the Houthis, and he failed, and he quit. He backed off. He said, the Houthis are tough hombres. I can't defeat them, and I'm backing off, right? And that's how you get your way with Trump. You stand up to him. And if you don't stand up to him, he'll walk all over you. And of course, he's been walking all over the European leaders. He's been humiliating them at every turn. And that will continue to be the case until they stand up to him. But I don't see much hope that they're going to stand up to him anytime soon.
No, I don't see that either. So Well, last time we spoke, you had just given a speech at the European Parliament, the EU Parliament, arguing that Europe's future was bleak. Do you think Venezuela has made it any bleaker, or it doesn't really play that much into the whole political West? Of course, besides if US actually takes Greenland, though.
I don't think what happened in Venezuela really matters much for the overall direction that U.S.-European relations are moving in, or European-Russian relations are moving in. I think what happens in Ukraine is of great importance there. I mean, the thing you want to remember about President Trump is that he uses military force and he does outrageous things so often that what is very important one day, a week later, is not even a front page story. It could be the case that a week from now, Glenn, the United States will be attacking Iran again. It may be that the Israelis and the Americans will launch a major air campaign against Iran. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's certainly in the realm of possibility. And there are a lot of people who think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. But once that happens, the front page story will be Iran. It will not be Venezuela. So another dimension to this is that the Venezuela situation is not likely to remain on the front page, either here in the United States or in Europe, because we'll be off pursuing another escapade. This is one of the ways that Trump gets away with all of these endeavors that he's pursuing. He does something, people start to criticize him, but before the criticism can sink in, he's off attacking another country. And then people start to criticize him, and before the criticisms sink in, he's on to another country. So as long as he doesn't get bogged down in a forever war, or to put it slightly differently, as long as he doesn't get bogged down in nation building, he'll be able to continue this policy for the foreseeable future. And this is why the big question at this point in time is, where does Venezuela lead? Right? He thinks, and his advisors think, that they went in, they won a quick and decisive victory, and now managing Venezuela will be a minor problem. That will free them up to move on to the next escapade. That's their view. And there are a lot of people, I'm one of them, who has real doubts about whether that's true. I think that, when you go in and you break a country like Venezuela, you effectively own it. And he claims that he owns it, right? He says that we're going to run it. When he starts talking like that, you say to yourself, okay, if you, President Trump, are going to run Venezuela, doesn't that mean you're going to do nation building? And if you're going to do nation building, isn't this going to be long, difficult, and messy, and likely to lead to failure? But then there are other people in the administration who argue that we're not going to get seriously involved in running the country. We can do it on the cheap. We'll see what happens. But if he gets bogged down in Venezuela, that will greatly limit his maneuver room to attack, more countries down the road, as he's been doing since he took office about a year ago.
Well, it's great at shifting the focus. Last week we're speaking about the Epstein files, and now, of course, they're all gone. But I'm not sure how long you can play this game before there's a massive miscalculation in which he gets drawn in. That could happen already. But I know you have places to run now, so I just want to thank you again for letting me pick your brain.
Oh, thank you, Glenn, for having me on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you. I just wish we had some more uplifting subjects to talk about these days. I mean, this is the new year. We're supposed to think in terms of happy new year, but given events in the world, it's hard not to be thoroughly depressed.
Yeah, very much agree. So, well, thanks nonetheless.
You're welcome.